love fried chicken. It doesn't even matter what kind it is. Country fried chicken, buttermilk fried chicken, Korean fried chicken, karaage or Japanese fried chicken, roasted fried chicken, and my current obsession, Nashville hot fried chicken. If it's on the menu, fried chicken is most likely what I'm getting. But I don't just want to consume it. I want to know about it. I want to make it. I want to understand it. I've watched video after video on YouTube. I've read dozens and dozens of recipes. I have to know. And I have to experience it. Do I brine it? Is a dry brine better? Or a buttermilk brine? Or just forego it altogether? How many times should I dredge? Do I use eggs as one of the dredge? What combinations of seasonings work best for the flour? Is it just flour? Is it all-purpose flour? Or do I combine it with cornmeal? Or maybe panko breadcrumbs? How hot should the oil be? How many times should I fry it? And as you see in this video, should I sous vide or not sous vide? You see, the recipe that I'm sharing with you is just kind of the latest recipe that I prepared. I'm probably going to make the fried chicken differently next time because I'm always tinkering with it. I'm always playing with it and turning it and trying new things to see what is best. This got me thinking about a tweet from author Diana Butler Bass. She writes, "Claiming that something is a settled matter in theology is like appealing to the original intent of the Constitution. It is a rhetorical strategy reinforcing hierarchy and authority, and it delimits the organic and dynamic nature of history from a place of privilege." In Hebrews, it says that the Bible is living and active. And even more so than that isolated verse, when we consider the entire narrative of the text, you start to see that it is undeniable that God and his relationship with creation is a roller coaster. The God of the Bible moves and acts within history. Not much in the Bible is settled. I'm reminded of this scene from an episode of my favorite TV show of all time, The West Wing. In this particular episode, the topic is capital punishment. In this scene, the White House Communications Director, Toby, is speaking with his rabbi about capital punishment. Toby says, "The Torah doesn't prohibit capital punishment." His rabbi replies, "No." Toby says, "It says eye for an eye." His rabbi interrupts and says this, "You know what else it also says? It says a rebellious child can be brought to the city gates and stoned to death. It says homosexuality is an abomination and punishable by death. It says men can be polygamous and slavery is acceptable. For all I know, that thinking reflected the best wisdom of its time, but it's just plain wrong by any modern standard." I love that tension. I love that paradox between this ancient text that is reflective both of the wisdom of its time, but that stands for all time. I think that is so important to understand. Sometimes when I talk about the Bible this way, some people warn that this is a slippery slope. It's an interesting critique. I would answer that interacting with the Bible, reading it, understanding it, that's the whole point. We've acted like God stopped speaking. That once we got to the place where the Bible agreed with a few people in power, then it was okay to stop. and then we would just force that interpretation on others. Instead, I believe God continues to speak to us today through the words on those pages. I also contend that if the concern is a slippery slope, what does it matter if you are sliding towards a greater understanding of the creator of the universe? It's not bad to slide and slip down a slope when God is at the other end. I believe not just reading, I believe relating and interacting with the Bible in this way creates room for wonder and awe, for our God to surprise us. This video will come out around Palm Sunday, the traditional beginning of Holy Week. And I wonder, when was the last time Holy Week surprised you? When was the last time God caused you to be awed? Do we seek to consume and use God to our advantage instead of being obsessed with knowing Him and pursuing the realities of His kingdom? Have we opted for a static, stale, rigid arrangement instead of a dynamic, organic, authentic relationship? For the second week in a row, this week's parable comes on the heels of another horrific shooting. In the midst of sorrow, fear, and more anger and frustration, I keep having this thought. This keeps happening. Doesn't something have to change? I think change requires changes. And what I mean is, how can we possibly expect a new and different outcome if we aren't first willing to change the circumstances that produced those undesirable situations in the first place? Especially if that undesirable situation, that undesirable outcome keeps happening again and again. Shouldn't we reach a point where we say, no more? Something has to change. And I'm not just thinking about laws or, actions and practicality. Part of this, I think, is really about changing something fundamental, something underlying. I'm really thinking about my fellow Christ followers. I mean, as Christ followers, we cannot stand pat in the face of injustice and inequity. It's just not part of who Christ calls us to be. It's not going to matter how loud we shout, God loves you, when the roar of our collective indifference remains deafening. I believe we have to do some real, honest introspection. Look, I have a lot to say on some specific topics, and I'm certainly going to do that. That's part of the reason why I started sharing these videos. But it begins with a willingness to ask difficult questions about the way we think and talk about God and the Bible. We need to let go of some long-held beliefs that no longer serve His kingdom well. This week's parable is about change. May we find the courage to break free from the bonds of all that keeps us from pursuing our God.